Hi guys, we're live at UKBEEF TV here at Ultimate Fitness Birmingham, and today we have two special guests, four-time British champion Dean Lesiak and four-time Mr. Olympia JayCutler, and we're going to have a little interview talking about how he became the four-time Mr. Olympia that he is and all the obstacles that he's overcome, and coming second to like obviously Ronnie and obviously Dexter, and how he came back and what brought him to sort of become the champion he is today, the legend.
So just clear, 4 times British champions, the same as 4 times Mr. Olympia. We both won 4 times, it's near enough. So let's start off. Jay, coming over to the UK, how'd you find it over here?
It's been great. I mean, this trip's been better than some of the ones I've had. The weather's been amazing, the crowds have been amazing, and the culture here.
Awesome, isn't it?
This is a little colder than I've been traveling around. And besides the traffic, it's been
at least it's dry.
Very, very welcoming from the fans, and I've seen a lot of great facilities. I'm not usually, when I travel to the UK, I've competed here, I've done trade events, but I never really got to travel to too many facilities and gyms and see how the guys train and to see the atmosphere. And there's a lot of just family orientated. People support each other a lot more. And we're losing a lot of that in the United States. I mean, I live in Las Vegas, which is a hotbed, right? But a lot of that camaraderie that you used to read about in magazines and people talk about from the old school, it doesn't really exist in the world of bodybuilding any longer. And I still see some of that here. And it's not even on the competitive level. I mean, some of these people don't even compete, but they're in the gym daily trying to work and build a better body or overcome obstacles, or I mean, you see all ages, young kids, older people. It's just really cool to see that, and that's why I kind of experienced that trip, and definitely it's going to leave an impact when I leave here.
How do you find it? Because whenever I've traveled, I find the UK, people in the UK pretty miserable, and you've experienced this, and everyone's like pessimistic. They're putting everyone down all the time. When I travel to the States, it seems the complete opposite. Everyone's really friendly, over nice. Is that the same for you, or is it opposite because you're traveling the other way around?
Honestly, guys, you're asking me to judge something, and listen, everyone's nice to me wherever I go,
just
right?
From your personal experience.
And I think, I grew up on the East Coast in the United States, and I feel that a lot of negativity was there, and hence that's why, number one, I was chasing a dream, but I always thought, okay, California's the sunshine, and that's where I wanted to go, and I ended up in California, ended up in Las Vegas in the end, but I definitely had a better surrounding when I went to California, because people are definitely better, not as moody, because the weather is much better and they have a better outlook on things. I think the hustle is there. They have to hustle. I think it's a little harder to make it when you're on the West Coast, but it was easy for me because I had that East Coast mentality, which is more hardcore. Migrating to the West Coast, it gave me a great advantage, and I definitely, I choose where I live now. Fortunately for me, my business allows me to do that. So I travel around, and like I said, the people have been great here to me, but I'm sure I'm coming in where the weather's a little better also. I'd hate to come in the middle of winter time here, because that's probably like the East Coast is very comparable, right?
Yeah. So I felt like, sorry, Sarge, I'll put this one first. When we're doing this kind of program, it's all about whatever it takes. And I believe like anyone that's pushed that hard and achieved something at your kind of level, I've had this strong mindset to be able to push past what most people can't. Do you think it's because of the East Coast, like you say, it was a much harder than the West Side, giving you that mentality to push past what the others aren't?
As you guys probably know, I came from a very strict background, so I was raised on a farm, and I was raised in a family business, so we did concrete work. So my mornings before school, after school, school vacations, weekends were all spent working a family business. There was no hours set, right? Because it's the family all working together. My brothers owned a concrete business, and of course my dad was a farmer, and there were chores to do. So when I wasn't working in the concrete, I was doing the chores, and I was forced to get up early, even out on the weekends when I was partying in high school. When I didn't want to get up at 6 in the morning, my dad would drag me out of bed and say, well, I'm going to work, so you have to work. And I hated my family at the time. Okay, I hated.
So how old was you then?
I was, 11. I started working,
so
doing concrete. And I mentioned in high school, because that's when you start doing a lot more things, right? I have a driver's license at 16. Started dating and doing all the things that young children do, whatever. But for me, like I was just very disciplined like that, and I was forced to. And like I said, I had a hatred toward my family. But little did I realize those early days and that strict lifestyle and learning the work ethic really set me up to be one of the hardest workers. I think there was no one that outworked me in bodybuilding in those early years that I started. I started training at 18.
Because that came so normal to you from your younger.
When you put a diet in front of me, you put a training schedule in front of me, you take out social atmosphere, because I was allowed none, okay, growing up. I was an introvert. I did play high school football. I wasn't allowed to play track because that was the busier season. We started working through the spring. As you know, East Coast, it snows, so we would be slower doing the concrete and obviously the farm stuff in the winter time. So I was able to participate in the football season towards the fall because everything was slowing down. But then, of course, the spring, when usually spring track was happening, they used to try to get me on the track team all the time. I was a great shot putter, discus thrower. I was an athlete. I couldn't do that because I was restricted with my work schedule after school. And, it was great making the money, and that came easy for me. But I was very, very limited on what I could do, that I really had fun. Yeah. And I think we're in bodybuilding, right? There's not a lot of fun things that you can do when you're training, eating, sleeping at the level to compete, to get on stage, right? Especially the 4 months training. And people think that, okay, it's a 4-month preparation, so the rest is fuck all, right? That's not the case. We're training 365, right? Because the day the Olympia ended, even at that level, I was already, 2-3 hours later after the Olympia, when I was at dinner with my friends and family, say, okay, how can I prepare for next year? It never stopped for me. And it stopped the day I retired because I knew I'd probably never get on stage again. And now I continue to just drive and continue to brand build, and that's why I still outwork a lot of these guys, and I'm still booked up all around the world doing appearances. I love to do what I do, and I love to spread the knowledge and the words. And
so that mentality from a child of being forced, and you hated it back then, do you think that's why you're so driven throughout your whole bodybuilding career?
That's what made me so great.
Yeah.
That's what made me so great, and I thank my parents, I thank my brothers for that. If people ask me who do I want to thank, I can thank a lot of people that got me to the level that I did in the end. But the early days of the strict lifestyle and the family upbringing, I think you're born, you're kind of bred with it, right?
Yeah.
You have to have that ethic in the beginning. It has to be influenced by someone.
You find the guys that have everything easy, giving everything easy, and that say they're doing the same bodybuilding prep as you, things start to get hard. It gets so hard for them that they just collapse and they can't handle it. So going through all that, it gives you that strength to push past where most couldn't, basically. Push yourself more in your diet, push yourself more through training, and be more strict, regimented.
100%. I was blessed with certain genetics, but there were so many guys that were better genetically gifted than I was that should never have lost to me, but they did, because I feel I outworked those people.
Do you think you were mentally sort of stronger?
And I was mentally stronger, so when I had to go restrictive a lot more, and I had to suffer, and I had to add more cardio, I had to add training days, or whatever it took, I was able to do that with ease, because doing concrete work and doing farm work and sleeping very few hours and, being under that pressure. I'd work 16-hour days.
Most people couldn't cope with that if they're not used to it.
You don't know what real work is. Me to be able to lift weights, make money doing that. Like, people complain about working out for, 2 hours a day, doing their cardio for 45 minutes at a time, twice a day. That shit's cake compared to what I had to grow up
6 meals a day, where people don't eat 6 meals.
That was very difficult. The eating was the hardest part about what I did, and I had to be strict with that. Obviously, to put my size on, that was probably the hardest.
To your biggest, what kind of calorie intake was you eating?
It wasn't
to gain.
I didn't watch the calories as much. I ate about 1,000 carbs a day, and I ate 400 grams of protein a day. I weighed 300 pounds. When I get ready for a show, I had to eat my way into the show. So my low carb day was 400 grams of carbs a day, which is it takes a lot to eat that. It would take me an hour sometimes to eat. It's 5 pounds of meat a day, 5 pounds of fish a day, whatever it is. It's not easy to force feed yourself. I was hungry for 3 out of 7 meals a day.
I wasn't eating nowhere near the amounts what you had, but I'm in a similar situation to put weight. I had to eat so much food, and I found dieting was enjoyable because I didn't have to eat as much as it came down, and it got a lot harder. It was having a lot less carbohydrates, but it was nice now to force feed and cram it in all the time. So, going back to when you was competing at your biggest and all the rest, competing against Ronnie Coleman so many years, coming so close, and him pipping you each time. How did that make you feel, or did that give you that drive? Because I think sometimes coming second is better than coming first, because it gives you that drive to want it so bad. What's your situation on that?
I think, I was hungry to win it. I mean, listen, when I started off training, I started off to be something great. I wasn't sure what that was. I never had a Mr. Olympia success pattern where I thought, okay, I'm going to win this thing. I didn't realize I could actually win it till the first time I stood next to Coleman, 2001, very controversial. The first time I placed second, right? Year prior, I was competing here in England at the English Grand Prix next to Ronnie. Fortunately, I was 8th that year, and no one between 2 and 7 went to the show. So it was just him and I that were the top 2 there, and I got to actually stand and compare, and I could look at the pictures. So I took a whole year to prepare in 2001, and I came and I won pre-judging by 6 points, and Ronnie came back and beat me by 3 for the night show. So he gained 9 points, which is ridiculously wrong. Okay, it can't happen. Somehow it did, and I lost. But I was ecstatic, right? I had been 15th the year prior, moved up to 8th, and then I was landing in 2nd place for the first time, where no one counted me to do that, right? I was beating guys that were my idols. Ronnie Coleman was an idol to me. Sean Ray was an idol to me. Kevin Leverone was an idol to me. Flex Wheeler, all these guys, right? But for me, I just looked at it as like, this is a success story. I was able to come back. I skipped 2002. I was building a house in Vegas. I won the Arnold Classic that year. Then I landed, of course, I was second to Ronnie 4 times in a row. Very frustrating time for me. But I was against the best bodybuilder in history.
Do you think some of those years you should have won it's very a lot of politics in bodybuilding?
What?
Half the crowd was favouring you.
Well, because they favor the underdog. I mean, it's just like the Kai Green effect, right? I mean, Phil Heath's 8-time Mr. Olympia. Do I think Kai Green ever won it any years? Not really. Listen, Ronnie could have beat. He won in 2001. The scores led me to win that show. Could he? If they didn't judge it with the scorecards and they would have swayed towards him, I would have been a little more believable, right? But definitely, 03 he won, 4 he won, 5 I had him. I felt it was close conditioning wise.
He was getting too heavy.
Yeah, and he was. He came in small in 2002, so I thought I had him in 03. He took his clothes. He took his clothes off backstage. I said, "Oh shit!" Lights out, right? So, we saw the biggest bodybuilder probably in the history we'll ever see. I don't think anyone's. I don't think Ronnie's ever going to be. If he was competing against Phil Heath, no disrespect, as you guys know, Phil Heath was my guy, but he dusted the floor with all of us. So in 06, I mean, it could have gone still to Ronnie Coleman. I mean, he was going for 9, right? I have no problem with that. I don't judge the shows, okay? I just go to get the job done, and that's, to stand up there against the best, okay? And I had a great prep. I always had different variables that put me in position there where, we ought to overcome certain things. I was the greatest bodybuilder, second best in the world, right? And I went way beyond my expectations of ever. I never thought I'd be Mr. Olympia. I came from, nowhere USA. Everyone told me I couldn't make it. Everyone told me I couldn't be a pro. Everyone told me I'll never win the Olympia. Everyone said you can't beat the unbeatable, which was Ronnie Coleman. He goes down in the history as, he's the all-time tied record winner right now. And of course, Phil going for 8, but he's a beast, and I had the utmost respect. I still do. We became great friends when we traveled, and I still looked at these guys. When I beat him, I felt bad. Yeah, I felt bad because I had looked up to this guy so much, and honestly, he challenged me. When he was gone, to me, it was boring. Yeah. Obviously, you see that, I kind of fell down a little bit. 07, I almost lost to Victor. 08, I lost to Dexter Jackson, which, was...
Do you think the target wasn't there for you anymore?
The target, it was kind of like, okay, what do I do with my body, right?
Because you'd already beaten Dexter before, you'd already beaten Victor before. So.
And you start to believe the hype a little bit, and I think for me, I was trying to figure out, okay, do I come in huge or do I come in my body weight? I'll be honest with you guys, in 2001, I was 255. When I won my first Mr. Olympia, I was 273. My best, I came back in 09, 254. So realistically, the best body was in the 50s. Yeah. I was coming in too big, started to lose the condition. I lost. I needed a kickstart to get it going. I changed trainers at that time, 2009. Came back and handedly won the show that year. Probably best physique I put out, best balance and best size overall package, right? I think 2001 I was still more streamlined. I got too big to beat Ronnie, right? I felt my physique was too big, you know. And then I came
You
down.
were chasing like the size game with Ronnie?
I was chasing the size game because I was trying to be the best in the world, and you know, at 240 I was happy with my physique. 99 Olympia, I thought I looked my best, and I finished second to last. I was devastated. But you know, I came back in 10. You know, won that one close, called to Phil Heath, and then 11 got injured and got knocked out. He started taking over from there, and the rest is kind of history. I came back in 13, finished 6th, my worst in 12 years. But I miss the days with Ronnie. Everyone else does too. People still talk about it. I mean, people aren't excited about the Olympia like they used to be.
That time when you finally took your first Olympia, can you remember that moment on stage?
Of course.
And how did you feel? And after all this time, and you doubting that you could be Mr. Olympia, and then finally you've done it.
I mean, you guys can imagine, because you've been in the competitive mindset, right? I mean, think about it. I became the best bodybuilder on the planet.
I mean, to be the best at anything in any sport or anything is phenomenal. To do it for 4 years is just like crazy.
Yeah,
sort of.
and for me to win, it solidifies like a whole lifetime. Remember, I trained since I was 18, and I was 33 when I won my first one. So to me, that was a lifetime. I trained solely on the purpose to build the best physique, and to be justified with that from the judges and of course all around the world, especially against competitors that I admired and I saw in books, because social media didn't exist at the time. So for me, it was a huge victory. You know, I cried.
How long did it take to sink in?
It took a long time. Yeah, it took about a week. You know, and I don't. You know, if you ever go back and you look at my videos and you look at my reactions, whether I won or lost, it was always the same, right? Because I prepared, you know, I was mentally prepared, and that's the one thing we talk about from the childhood. I used to pray every morning when I went to work doing concrete, because I mentioned I worked 16-hour days, very common, and I said, please get me through this day, because I hated it so much. But I actually loved bodybuilding. Like, I loved to go to the gym. I didn't necessarily like the diet. I didn't like to eat as much as I did, or...
Did you enjoy the competing on stage?
Not necessarily.
I love the training.
The process.
The stage stuff, I hated the hype. Remember, guys, at this level, like, everything was hype, right? I always had a guy coming up behind me that was going to come. It was like a threat every year, right? Oh, this guy's going to come take position of Jay. And, you know, I had one goal, and that was to beat Coleman. Okay, it became... Mr. Olympia was a little elusive, because I looked at Mr. Olympia as being like, okay, that's Ronnie, right? Because he was what solidified what it was. And for me, like, I had the vision of, okay, I got to beat Ronnie, and then the title is something else that just comes with it, right? So when I wanted it, that's why I think it took so long to sink in, because then I realized, holy shit, I know what it is now. And
after 70 years, it just seemed like Mr. Olympia was you versus Ronnie.
Of course,
and everyone else was so
they were
far
disappointed
off.
about it. You know, the guys were pissed about it.
Yeah.
As I would be too. If a two-man show, all the advertising had me and Ronnie on posters and no one else, right? But that's what people came to see. They loved that battle.
Yes.
I mean, they talk about it still. People tell me all the time, I mean, I'm going to get it tonight. These people say, we missed the days of you and Ronnie, you know?
We're getting back to one of the years, they decided to bring in drug testing, didn't they?
Directed testing, yeah.
Directed testing,
2001, yeah.
I think you come second that year. And
2001.
They tried to strip you of your second place or something. What was the story behind that?
They tried to strip a second place. They were testing for diuretics. They started testing in 90, I don't know what year it was.
96.
Was it 96?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Chicago.
you know better history than me, because I would turn pro at 96, okay? So, you know, I competed in 99 Olympia. I finished, you know, second to last. But the thing is with this, okay, let's be real. Bodybuilders use diuretics, a lot of them get into condition, or they use some sort of anti-estrogen or whatever. And they were testing for certain diuretics, but not testing for others, okay? And some of the gurus that were helping these guys had different mixes of diuretics, okay? They said I flunked on 6 diuretics. Absolutely impossible. So when they tried to take the money away, and they said, you're going to lose your placing, you know, here I was, placed second for the first time, should have won. And they called me and say, you failed the drug test. I said, impossible, retest, okay? And they retested it, and they said, okay, it's still the same. This is when Wayne DeMille was running it. So I said, what are my options? He said, either you can fight it or you can take it, forfeit your money and your placing. I said, well, I'm going to fight it. And he said, oh, wow, okay. So basically, I got into a suit with the IFBB at the time. I hired an attorney, and looked at how the process was and how the samples were sitting, and lo and behold, the samples were left loose, and they were sitting backstage and not supervised. They turned it over, and they let me have it, and the rest is kind of history. They tested me at the 2002 Arnold Classic. Wayne was adamant about telling me, "Oh, we're drug testing you backstage." I said, "No problem." Won that show handedly, passed the diuretic test, and amazingly, the diuretic test disappeared after that. Never had it.
I don't understand why they'd bring in any kind of drug test into a show. Which is obviously everybody knows everyone's taking drugs. You can't just pick one drug out of this and
well, I mean, I think diuretics is more dangerous, obviously, than the steroids and everything else, because we had Benaziza passed away, as
Was it all diuretics or just?
No, it's just a combination. These guys they go overboard with the diuretics and rely on the diuretics to get dry, and sometimes you got to be, I said, just when I looked at these guys, you got to be in striking distance. You got to be somewhat prepared. At least a couple weeks out. You don't have to kill yourself with diuretics, and these guys were just kamikaze concoctions in order to.
But a lot of these guys probably weren't lean enough in the first place, and it's fat rather than water.
Yeah. So they just overtake the diuretics, and your kidneys shut down, the system shuts down, and you end up half dead, and that's what's dangerous. So, listen, we haven't had an episode since, right? So obviously, someone's figured it out. Okay, so let's be hopeful that nothing else. We don't see that again.
I mean, in an ideal situation, it'd be great if there was no drugs in any sport, but we know it's in every single sport, and some are a lot more hidden than others. Bodybuilding, it's never talked about, but we all know that everybody uses it. If you didn't, you wouldn't have a chance against the competition. You get natural shows which are tested, and you don't really get guys bigger than 11, 12 stone on stage, do you? So real bodybuilding, everybody knows what they do, but unfortunately, some people who are not as genetically gifted or can't push themselves so hard just turn to drugs and abuse it, think take more, it'd be better, and they end up fucking themselves up down the line, or force growing. You see like guys now with all these peptides and the insulins and all the rest of it, and they're force growing themselves, and they're putting so much weight on so quick, and they look like big.
But it spins my head, because I'm running into that era where people ask me about like certain substances, and I have no idea even what they're talking about. I mean,
it's always a new thing.
I don't know. I'm in an era where there's just so much new things on the market that I had no idea. I mean, listen, when I started off, I heard about testosterone. 18 years old. That's what we talked about. I mean, that's basis of what a bodybuilder uses. Like,
you look at the physiques now; they're not better than they were 10, 50. So,
but you got concoctions in basements being introduced to the market, and I think it's just dangerous. And these kids read the internet and they buy from the internet, and I mean, it's just very, very unhealthy atmosphere for the younger generation, and even the people that are smart enough but just don't want to spend the money on something that really could help them, and rather they spend it on something that hurts them.
So, coming from one of the best in the world, what do you think you need to have the best physique you can possibly have? Is it down to drugs? Is it down to genetics? Is it down to hard work?
No, listen, man. I think you can look at the 13 Mr. Olympias and understand that, a combination of a lot of things. Really, number one, genetics. Yes, you have the ability to build the perfect body where all the body parts are present, right? The conditioning can be there, muscle bellies. But, we talk about in this interview the mindset, right? It takes a certain mindset to get to that, the day in, day out. My life was a box. I lived it. I had, somewhat of a structure. But listen, man, like genetics, and I hate to say, I mean, listen, Phil Heath has genetics, right? But he was narrow. He beat the narrowness by adding more muscle, okay? I was wide in my shoulders, but I had a wide waist. I had to offset that by building bigger shoulders, built bigger legs. Everyone has certain genes. I had small calves when I started. I had small arms. I had no upper chest.
But like genetics ain't going to make you get up in the morning 5 o'clock to the cardio. Going to make you diet.
I believe. I believe hard work will always beat genetics. But that guy like a Ronnie Coleman who's got genetics and hard work, it's game over.
Listen, Ronnie Coleman, he was a natural bodybuilder. He entered his first Mr. Olympia natural. He won his pro card natural. So you're going to have a guy like that it blows people's mind, right? You have someone like Lee Haney, who was Mr. Olympia at 22. He retired at 30. There's certain people that are just they're built for the business, okay? And we can talk about genes and everything else. I mean, listen, no one was in the position. Look at the guys that competed against. Me and Ronnie were the two biggest guys, right? Besides like a Marcus Rule, who didn't have the best shape, right? But we were the best combo guys, the top two guys. Dexter Jackson, who's, you know, a lot smaller, but round muscle, and the guy's 49, he's still competing. What does it tell you? It's a lot of, yes, genes, yes, work ethic, yes, diet. I mean, I think that, you know, of course you could have mentioned the drugs in there, but at the same time, it's the consistency of what you do, right?
If drugs didn't exist, it would still be the same people at the top, wouldn't it?
It would be a lot of the guys at the top. I wouldn't say everyone in the top 10, but I would say that, you know, it does have a lot to do with the mindset. But the nutrition, you asked me what was, if I had to list number one, it is the nutrition and how your body responds to certain foods. And I'm not just saying everyone has to eat chicken breast and rice, because listen, that's not responsive to some people. I was a fish dieter. Some people eat red meat. Some people eat chicken. Some people eat turkey. Whatever it is, okay? Some people are vegetarians now. There's pro bodybuilders. It's becoming just, you know, you can do anything you want. You can't be held back. Don't make excuses for yourself. Just chase it and see where it takes you.
But you kind of proved it, because you said there was guys who were a lot more genetically gifted than you, but you pushed past them over years and years and years of smashing it, having that mentality that yes, you had good genetics to enable you to grow a lot of muscle over a lot of hard work a long period of time, but there was guys with nicer lines and nicer shapes, and you proved that hard work, and you pushed past them, and you became the best in the world.
I was up against Ronnie Coleman. If there was no Ronnie Coleman, how many Olympias would I have won? I mean, Flex Wheeler, probably the best genetically gifted bodybuilder ever. I mean, look where he would have been, right? I mean, without Dorian Yates there. There's no reason Flex Wheeler shouldn't have been Mr. Olympia. Kevin Leveroni shouldn't have been Mr. Olympia. Sean Ray shouldn't have been. Nasser Osambadi. I mean, all these guys should have won at least one. So when I won one, it was a gift. Rich Gaspari won three in a, you know, he was second 3 in a row. He could have won one, but he was up against Lee Haney.
Lee Labrada as well.
Lee Labrada. All these guys that were second. I was the guy that broke the trend, right?
Well, Jay, we're going to have to wrap this up. We're struggling for time now. So it's been an absolute pleasure having you at Ultimate Fitness, and thank you for doing this little interview.
And hopefully we're going to see you again very soon.
I'll be back.